So I'd like to welcome you to Roy Chua, and Roy is founder and principal analyst of AvidThink, which is a research and advisory firm. Before that, Roy was a co-founder at SDX Central. So, Roy, I'm going to let you introduce your panelists and topic of the discussion. So, over to you.
All right, thank you, Mark, and thank you, audience, for joining us today. We have a dynamic panel on the topic of dynamic orchestration. We'll be talking about driving end-to-end network automation and service orchestration across multiple domains. We have 30 minutes scheduled for this panel, and we'll try to leave a couple of minutes at the end for audience questions. So feel free to put them in as they occur to you during the panel. I'm going to ask the panelists to quickly introduce each of themselves, and we're going to start with Stefan. Stefan, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hello, I'm Stefan Walraven, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Inmanta. Inmanta is a software company that develops an end-to-end service orchestrator.
Excellent. Thanks, Stefan. Over to you, Russ.
Hey, Roy. I'm Russ Bartels. I lead the SDN orchestration, big data engineering, and data science teams at Windstream.
Excellent. Thanks, Russ. And over to you, Javier.
Thank you, Roy. My name is Javier, and I'm the IT chief architect at Telefonica at the group level.
Excellent. Thanks, Javier. And finally, Klaus, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, pleasure. I'm Klaus Martiny. I'm with Deutsche Telekom. I'm the senior program manager at the headquarters of Deutsche Telekom, and I'm happy to share the ISG Zero Touch Service Management.
Excellent. Thank you, Klaus. All right, we're going to kick it off and start with the why question. So, Stefan, I'll direct this to you, and we'll see, and I'm sure the other panelists have an opinion on this as well. So why is end-to-end network automation and cross-domain orchestration important? Why should we care, Stefan?
So for me, personally, I believe if you want to achieve the real benefits of automation, then actually end-to-end automation and network automation is the only option. I often hear or see that there is partial automation is the first step, or it's an evolution towards end-to-end automation, but actually I don't agree with that, because in my opinion, partial automation brings no real value to the customers or to the CSPs. So why bother time and money on that? It's an expensive sidetrack in my opinion. So, and end-to-end automation is not that difficult or doesn't take that much time. In 6 months with just a few people, you can achieve it and fully automate an end-to-end service in a complex telecom environment. And with end-to-end, I mean a customer-facing service with full lifecycle management, so you can deliver it through a self-service portal, also automated testing with CI/CD. And typically these cross multiple domains, and that's where we come to this multi-domain orchestration. In order to achieve end-to-end automation, a multi-domain orchestrator is a key component in the story. And I can imagine that some people in the audience will be like, yet another orchestrator, do we really need this? In my opinion, actually, it's the one you should start with, because you should start from the end-to-end story. And then I believe that a good multi-domain service orchestrator can also handle single domain automation. And only for a few cases, you really need a dedicated orchestrator. So by focusing on this end-to-end service and the end-to-end automation, you can not only create value much faster, but you will also limit your expenses and the learning curve on many different tools.
Oh, well, thank you. I think that's a good start. Like let's just go end to end. Otherwise, that makes no sense. Yeah. I'm going to ask if one of the other panelists wants to jump in, but before I do that, to the audience, we have a poll running right now. So if you could go ahead and vote in the poll, we would all really appreciate it. And the panel will perform much better if you vote right now. So the rest of the panelists, who wants to jump in? Anyone agree with Stefan? Javier, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Roy. Yeah, I mean, I think we all agree on the basis. A full view on an end-to-end orchestration is needed, because we're going to manage a lot of pieces: access network, core network, all the transport, and we need to deliver services through the different domains. But at the same time, we need to manage the infrastructure, how they're going to scale up, how we're going to manage the assurance, and so on. So if we don't get automation on that, and we don't get intelligent orchestration, that is not going to happen. I mean, we are not going to be able to manage the full thing. That's my view.
No, I think that's fair. So now we've determined that. Klaus, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, for sure I agree completely with Stefan what he said, end-to-end automation on Javier. Because if I would do that, I would fight against my own ISG ZSM. But I have a question for Stefan. Stefan mentioned that you can do automation end-to-end in 6 months. Is it based on proprietary solutions? On what is it based? Because there is no standards available for the time being. How you do that? How we can achieve automation end-to-end from a device to another device in 6 months? If you talk about our network.
I think that's a good question, and I also agree with the thing that there are multiple things involved in this automation. But you have to focus on start with a specific end-to-end service. Say, we're going to automate this fully and start from that. I don't say you have to automate a full telco environment at once.
Okay.
But it's one specific service, but end-to-end.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be maybe proprietary tools, but I don't think you do need all those things. It's also about the way of working and defining this end-to-end service and working together across the different domains, because that's where I think a lot of struggle is also that you have one automation team, but they depend on other departments with the silos or whatever, or departments that don't want to do the shift towards automation yet. But that's an important aspect, but that's also covered in these 6 months. I talk from experience that it's possible. I don't say it's the most complex service, but it's a starting point to get your organization in the automation story, and from that point you can continue on automating more complex services, but the basis is there, and then it will go a lot faster, and the next service will be in 5 months and 4 months, and you can speed up. And with partial automation, you do one part, and then you do something else, and then another thing, and then in the end someone asks, what is the result for my customers? And it's like, but we need another thing to be automated. You keep on investing, but you don't see the result. And I think that's an important part for the success.
That's fair. I think, that's a credit. That's probably a tangible win is what you're saying, a tangible win. And I think, in software architecture over the years, as I've worked with many architects, it's basically take a slice of the system. I know slice is a bad word here. It's got other meanings, but it's basically take a vertical slice of the system and make it work from top to bottom. In this case, of that end to end, and then you expand from there, right? So small wins, which are tangible and you can celebrate, from a cultural standpoint. So absolutely. Now, speaking of sort of real world lessons and real world examples here, let's talk about how we might be able to successfully, part of this whole automation orchestration is a closed loop system, right? And then we talked a little bit about multiple layers, but how can we successfully implement closed loop systems across multiple layers in the network, right, to address the normal challenges we see with performance and quality? So let's maybe hear from Russ. What can you share with us?
Kind of along with what we just talked about with the end-to-end, integrating, I guess, our ability to discover information in the network configuration, as well as creating that closed loop with telemetry, leveraging, machine learning, data science, and policies built within the orchestration layer. We're then able to not only improve the, service orchestration for service delivery teams, but also adds that benefit of providing that visibility and capabilities of, adding in what I forget, one of the panelists earlier today was talking about improving service assurance and adding in, expanding really the view and role of service assurance by, taking service orchestration and service assurance and combining, not only the technologies and the logic, but the intelligence that's needed to implement that closed loop.
I think that's very fair. Anyone want to jump in and follow on to Russ's comments, panel? All right. Well, Stefan, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, it's maybe also a question towards Russ. Then I understand for the closed loop automation also you need a lot of data in order to do that.
That's right.
I guess you also need this end-to-end view and the end-to-end orchestration. And I wonder how far are you into having this end-to-end view on the service and to get all the useful data to make the right decisions and not depend on any humans anymore.
Yeah, I think we're Windstream is there in a few areas, specifically around our SD-WAN as well as our UCaaS. We're focusing on kind of our strategic services. We have the capabilities and the infrastructure in place to, ingest that the telemetry data from the edge devices in near real time, integrating that with what we're seeing at the orchestration layer, so creating closed loop as well as providing that visualization. We also go a step further and provide that visualization to the customer via our WeConnect customer portal. So that just kind of provides our customers the same visibility that our service assurance teams have, along with that closed loop, which is how we're able to provide that 100% uptime guarantee.
I have a comment for that. I think closed loop is a good discussion point. We discussed it for a while. I think important is that the definition of the closed loop is well done as well, because if we have different setting in the closed loop, which we are using, I think by the end of the day, then it's not a good enabler to achieve automation end to end. It should be clearly defined what a closed loop is, where it starts and where it ends. And that is for me also an important topic, which we have to consider if you're talking closed loop as an enabler for automation end to end.
I think that's a very fair point, because there are actually multiple loops on there, right? At sort of the different layers, and then there's the big giant loop at the top, which is the loop that says contribute to revenue here, right? Speaking of revenue, so all that we're talking about is pretty interesting, right? But how does this relate to revenue, right? This automation we're talking about, does this actually tie into any kind of revenue making service type stuff? Javier, what do you think?
Well, this is the question.
It's $1 million question. No, it's now the $1 billion question, isn't it? Right?
Yeah,
You've
that's
scaled
right.
up.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's the question our business units always are doing to us. But anyway, yes, I think this, since we're going to be able to deliver new kind of services, these ones should come with new revenue streams, right? And these new kind of services should be automated from the end-to-end perspective. Since we do all the onboarding on the CI/CD pipelines and all these things, until we do all the provisioning, instantiation, or whatever, from the edge to the regional data centers or whatever we need to deliver. But not only that, I mean, one thing that we still haven't go through in this panel is about API exposure. So we can really do this automation of the services. So we can expose these APIs to our customers, or even to another retailers that need to use the new services or the new capabilities that we are delivering. So there should be revenues coming from here. Yes, there should be, but there's still, from our perspective, a journey to get the services on board into our new platforms, into our new network.
I think that's fair. Anyone want to add to that in terms of this journey here? Because if not, I'm going to ask about the journey, which is how, like, I think we've talked a little earlier, right? And I think it was a fair question to Stefan, which is, how do you make this happen in 6 months? Standards are not even defined. We don't even know how to do this yet, right? So how do we tie these into a standard, some kind of framework, right, for service assurance or policy-enabled service assurance, and more importantly, how do you make sure that when Stefan solutionizes in one telco, that's repeatable somewhere else, and that if they have 2 or 3 different parallel threads that are working, that we're working collaboratively and not just doing it again and again and again and reinventing the wheel, right? Which we seem to do over and over again. Because I mean, fundamentally, look, we've all been in telco for some years. Maybe Stefan less than us, or maybe Russ likewise. I don't know, right? But I know I've been here for a long time. Oh, it feels like it. we've been here before. Orchestration, automation, right? If you go back 10 years, 15 years, I bet you'll find those words in the same articles, the same papers, right? Over and over again. So number one, I'm going to let Klaus talk because I know he's a passion for these frameworks and the like. But then, like everyone else, to jump in, which is what's going to be different this time round in 2021? It's because we are now finally smarter. I don't know, Klaus, why didn't you start with what you're doing at Etsy, and then we can all jump in.
For sure. Thank you. That gives me an opportunity to explain a little what we're doing in Etsy. In Etsy, we are talking about the zero-touch service management. We are delivering a framework that is we are in a good status right now, and we're talking about also closed loop. But we are not starting from scratch. We are not deploying that by our own. We are not specifying everything in ZSM which is needed to specify. We are looking across the market what is there and that we can use in order to deliver end-to-end automation from an automation point of view. And I think I like to you mentioned that we are for a while in this industry. It's sure, definitely the case, but there's a huge difference. We talked about the first time about automation as we talked about ZON, self-organizing networks. That was but only partially automated, but now I think that all of us in the industry recognizing that we have to deliver a framework really end-to-end, and we have to do that in a collaborative manner. Nobody can do that by their own, and there's no hero on the market who say, yes, I can do that alone, ignore the rest of the world. I think that is very important to understand that we have to do it as a community and not as a single organization. Nobody can do that alone.
No, I think that's fair. Russ, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to add on top of, I guess, the standards that Etsy and TM Forum and other standards bodies are collaborating around. As a service provider, I need to ensure that as we're evolving and modernizing our networks, that as part of that RFO, RFP process, we're requiring these vendors to abide by the standards. The most difficult thing that we're doing from a development perspective is continuously, building to yet the new network technology or the new network element that's getting added to our network, and creating something or developing something that's not only backwards compatible with our existing legacy systems, but that works with the new. And if the new systems aren't following the standards, every new system, as we talked about, or every new network element is going to require us to, start from scratch yet again. And that's, I mean, we've got great development processes with Agile, et cetera, but you'd like to be able to just plug and play something every once in a while into the orchestration solution and not have to start from scratch every time.
I think that's fair. I think that's definitely true. And so RFPs, RFIs, right? Make sure that box is checked. Make sure that box is there in the first place, right? Stefan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I maybe have to answer also to Klaus again about how can you do it without the standards. I think it's also about flexibility and being able to quickly adapt. So that's also the agile story. So can you do it without standards? Yes, you can do it, but standards are of course useful and definitely for the interoperability, and it will make things a lot easier. But in some cases, there is no standard for something, or it's not fully covering everything you need, and then you can decide to wait, or you can just say, okay, I go forward, but I do it in such a way that when there is a standard, I can quickly adapt. It will take some effort, but it will be limited. And I think it's being able to adapt to that, because tomorrow at ZSM, the standard is finished, but then the day after, someone invents some new technology and we have to change again. So we always have to adapt to these things, and I think flexibility is the key thing there to adapt, and indeed don't reinvent the wheel. It's true what you said. I'm less from a telco environment. Only 5 years now in telco, so I'm more from the software side, and I see a lot of reinventing the wheel. And I know telco is different, but it's not that different anymore. It's becoming more and more software.
Right.
And you can reuse a lot of things that exist, or practices or principles. You have to adapt them to your environment, but it doesn't mean you have to completely reinvent it. So I think that's a key thing.
I think that's fair. Yep. So telcos need to copy the wheel, adapt to the wheel, or we can just reinvent the wheel faster each time, right? How's that, Javier? Yeah, you have some thoughts.
I think that standards are needed. I mean, we need this framework that set the borders, but maybe at this point we cannot expect them to get to the details that probably we will need in an implementation when we do delivery and when we choose any vendor, partner, or whoever to implement the solution. So what, as Stefan just said, we need to be flexible. We need to use the software engineering capabilities, microservices, and all these things that allow us, that give us that flexibility. Since the standards are going into the details, we will implement them. But at the end of the day, we need the revenues and we need to deliver the services.
I think that's fair. Yes, Klaus. Yes.
I like to add something because I'm a traditional guy coming from standards. For sure, we have to learn very quickly in the world of standardization how we do that. But please have in mind, your money, your salary will be delivered based on standard technology. And going forward in a new direction, a new world, I think we have to consider that. There is a benefit of standards and a benefit of open software solution. We have to find the best way how we can combine that. But to ignore standards, I think then by the end of the day, it will be difficult to generate a revenue stream because interoperability is one key element of a telco company. And if you are investing so much money in new technology and more or less on a 10-yearly basis, look about 3G, 4G, and now 5G. And 5G is not completely done. Now we're talking about 6G. That means another kind of investment has to be done. And that should be really in a very proper manner in order to get the revenue back or the kind of investment back. And that, I think I am a fan of going forward with a framework as we do it in ZSM, but only learning from open source communities. There's a collaborative manner, a cooperative way how to doing that. And as I said, nobody can do that alone. And Inmanta is you're also a member of ZSM. I'm happy to say that. We had some good discussion in the beginning, controversial discussion, because Stefan can challenge you. That is not a point. He can do that very well in a very professional manner. And I like that.
It's good.
It's really good.
That's where I think that's where innovation comes from, right? It comes from a different world, and very often invention is about taking something from one domain, adapting it to a different domain, and looking at it differently. And I think that to me, I know I've learned a lot, right? I thought I was smart, and I was talking on a different panel a couple of days ago, but a couple of weeks ago, but test-driven development (TDD), which is something on the cloud side, because I did. And I've been on the cloud side as well, and I thought I was smart. And I saw in Stefan's presentation at some point, it's like I'm like, okay, I'm not so smart after all, right? Clearly I'm not, right? I know that now. That's okay. But I think that's important, right? That cross-pollination between the different groups and innovations is where value comes from. And I think, I think as you all have been pointing out, we're moving to a sort of cloud architecture. Maybe it's not so different anymore, right? Telco is not as different as it used to be from the cloud to enterprise IT. And by adopting on both sides, I think that the benefits, will accrue, right? So very good. Let's go to questions. We have a couple of minutes, and we actually have quite a few questions coming in. So the audience is clearly enamored by the discussion here. So let's give them back something. Let's pick one here. Okay. Ji Zhang is asking, what are the minimum key building blocks to be implemented to achieve end-to-end service orchestration? Does the panel have any thoughts about, maybe what are the minimum key building blocks based on the experience that you have? Yes, Javier.
Well, we set up in our strategy 2 different phases. The first one is foundation. We need to set up the basic to connect to the network, so we get the data, and after that, delivering the orchestration, so we can do actions into the network once we get all the interfaces. So I guess that those are the main important pieces to deliver a little bit of automation, at least for the service assurance side.
I would say expand, I guess,
Sure.
to the, I guess, order management systems and the customer portals. It really starts with, with the quote to the order to service orchestration, the network, and then creating that loop, so to speak. I would, speak for Klaus here, but I mean, having standards in place. I know we're talking about the building blocks. If you don't have the standards, you're not going to be able to do that end-to-end automation or orchestration. And the standards more than just the API standards, but it's standards, simple things like naming conventions. You want to make sure that you've established the standards, you communicate and partner with the business, service delivery, service assurance, in order to truly operationalize that end-to-end service orchestration.
I like to add something here. It's a really good question about how many functions we need in order to achieve end-to-end automation. I think this question we raised a couple of times years ago, but I think what we have to do, we have to define, if we're moving from a functional view to a service-based view, then we have to define the services which we needed to enable automation end-to-end. I can't give you a clear number about the functions, because tomorrow something change, then we have another function in. But I like really to enhance the discussion which kind of service-based architecture we need. I think there's a question on which part of the network we are using service-based architecture or a functional view. Maybe it depends on the latencies which are required to in this piece of the network. Yep. And I think we have to think, we have to do it a little bit different. We have to define a framework. We have to define services which enable the end-to-end automation. It can be done a very simple way, and I think we have to change our thinking how we can achieve end-to-end automation.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm going to go to one more question so that we can get to one more question before we wrap. I know Stefan has something to add, but maybe on this one. This one I think is interesting because it's like, what are potential challenges for orchestrating end-to-end services in industrial environments for 5G private networks? Because now it's a little outside, right, your normal service area, right? What about computing, storage, networking, integration with sort of baseline services, the shop floor? So now the services have stretched into the customer premises, right? It's private 5G. Any thoughts about this, right? So your minimum building blocks have now changed, right? Because now you have a customer potentially sort of an IT type environment or some elements on that side. Any thoughts about how you would do something like that?
I think there again, it's about the flexibility and having the right tools that are flexible to adapt and to make abstraction. And I think what I also want to add to the previous question, which is key building block, I think is also for this is the team, and it's a cross-functional and cross-organizational team. And if you go to industry and enterprise customers, you have to work together also with them, and you have to include them, because in the end, the same goal, you want to do this end-to-end automation, good for the operator, good for the enterprise, it's also good for the vendors to achieve this. So we all have to work towards the same thing, and we'll all be flexible and adapt in order to make this possible, and not like this is the way we want to work and everyone has to adapt. No, everyone there is not one way of working. Continuously have to adapt to that to find out what is the best way, and also if there are standards or not, how can we apply to that and
yep.
all the solution.
Yep, excellent. No, very fair. And with that, actually, we've come to the end of the time. And so I'd like to thank the audience for participating. Apologize to those audience members who put questions in there. We were not able to get to all your questions, unfortunately. But thank you, panel. Thank you, Klaus. Thank you, Russ, Javier, and Stefan for your participation. It's been pretty exciting. I think it was a lively panel and definitely enjoyed the content. And I hope the audience did too. Thank you.